What's your game plan to prevent reconstitution from happening at High Point and junior high?
At High Point and junior high, one of the things that we've done differently going forward with those campuses is we have a different professional service provider on those campuses, and it's a lady who's came in and worked with other districts. She was with Bryan last year on several of their campuses, been in spring, and looking at and taking the data deeper into the classrooms and trying to really stress identifying the students' needs. It's the same philosophy that we've been on, but even more pointed on that of identifying each student's needs and weaknesses and looking specifically at those kids and taking that with the teachers and then identifying pointed interventions to our students around their needs.
Can you give me examples of anything that she's come up with so far?
Well,
and how long you've been working with her?
They've had an RTI process in place with the district, on the campus, and now they're targeting that RTI a little bit differently.
RTI.
And so they're taking, response to intervention,
Yeah.
so they're taking the opportunity now to, each week, they target what goal or objective those students need, and they filter them to teachers who are best in those practices. So before we may have had some interventionists, and so you were assigned to this interventionist for a week and they would do something. Now we're trying to target and say, well, looking at the teacher's strengths and saying, okay, I know you're a math teacher, but you really did a great job on teaching measurement. So we're going to send these kids who struggle with measurement to you, and we're going to move these kids over. So a little bit more targeted approach to how we can best, and that's kind of a quick example of some of the things, different reading, people who are really good at reading, and so kids who are struggling with reading, we're trying to get them in several days a week to target those particular goals and objectives as outlined when they're looking at these individual needs of these students. And again, it's a new process, so they're kind of working through how that looks, and changing it, each week. And they're doing some sustained silent reading every day with the students, so that we're trying to build the reading vocabulary and reading fluencies and comprehension skills of the students. So I'm using that approach for all students to, their goal on junior high campus is to move, if you came in at a level reading, that by the time you leave you will move 3 years. So even if you're above level reader, you will move three grade levels above where you are by the time you enter. So that sounds pretty simple, but really trying to target some of those areas of student need.
Yeah, and I think the literacy part of it is a big piece of it, and being able to go through those tests and really look and having the teachers look at what the assessment instrument is, even more so than what we have in the past. Rosemary, the thing about the situation when you're IR and in this type of situation, the accountability measures become the focus. I don't know that that's what everybody wants it to be. That's just the nature of the situation. When you're in this situation, those tests and those become more the focus for the teachers and for the administration, from the central office all the way through the campus administration for the board, of more targeted practices there. So,
do you think that helps or hinders classroom instruction?
I think it help or hinder. I think it gives it a certain focus, but the focus is the nature of it makes the focus be on how to get these kids to pass the state's test, which may or may not be aligned to that student's needs, but it's aligned to that student's deficiencies on passing that test. So I think changes the perspective of it, because it's a conversation we've continually had that's been continually out there and with our teachers. There is no question that our teachers that are in our classrooms are working extremely hard and always have worked extremely hard to work with our students and get them to the levels and where they, and take them as far as they can take our students. We just have to move some things along, and there's been the changes within the standards within the TEKS, and teachers struggle. One of the teachers' struggles is with how to incorporate the new stuff that comes in with the assessment to a level, especially if they have students who are behind, even from the very coming to school behind on where the state expectation is. So thank you.
So do you think those are students that were maybe passed, that should have been passed from the prior grade level?
I think that I don't think it's necessarily passing it's more of how much you can actually build as you go through the phase. It's really hard on our teachers, and we had a literacy discussion yesterday with staff about where the standards are and where we're trying to make that progress. In the system that we have teachers who are working on literacy and reading at the first grade level, and they can hit all their marks, but if the comprehension's not there, they're behind already on where they need to get to on that mark. But you can't. Our system's not designed to just hold a student till they understand everything so they go to the next test, because that's frowned upon as well. That's another part of the accountability. We have too many that are held back, or too many because you're just not ready for the next level. Then we get dinged on those things as well. So there's a big snowball there with that. But the reconstitution piece and what we're looking at, you're looking at a couple of different things. High Point, the passing rates really were there across what we had. They did not have enough students under the new measure that made it to the highest level of achievement on the test. It wasn't passing the state exam, it was getting to the highest level of achievement. And with some of the small numbers, they fell behind there. So they're looking at more of how do we take our students that already passed the test just to pass it with a higher test score, is a lot of their focus, and how do we get them to apply and have a deeper understanding of that on those measures. The subpopulations did impact it at some of the campus. Really, each campus picture is a little bit different. High Points, it wasn't as much of a subpopulation because we don't have as many subpopulations that count there. It was
What's the ratio there? Do you know?
I have to go get my full numbers. You still have,
We're still we're 85+% white there.
I thought it was more like 60. White is still a majority population out there, whereas in town it's Hispanic is our majority population now. So when you're looking at the state standard, for like Webb Elementary School, the Hispanic is the majority population, so everything is geared towards Hispanic population. Out at High Point is white, so everything's geared towards white as the top population. And High Point's Index 4 was college and career readiness. That's what they missed.
Okay.
And so they didn't miss the fact that the kids passed the test. They missed the college and career readiness, which means that we passed it at that advanced high level. We're passing the test, we're just not passing it advanced high.
It didn't have a large enough
population to do the advanced high.
And Index 2, which was Index 2, which is growth, which is a growth index, and it's essentially the same root cause is the number of students that reach the highest mark, or the level 3 mark on the test. that was where the root cause of the IR for High Point came in. So that High Points is a little different tack. They're doing targeted interventions where, similar to what Dr. Morgan was describing, where they're taking the kids and they're grouping them by their skills that they need, and certain teachers are working with them for periods of time, and doing some rotation on that. They're also working a lot within the faculty of which standards are the high leverage standards that we need to embed a little bit deeper with our kids, that we need deeper understanding. So there's a lot of work within the faculty there of looking at those pieces. Where junior high, you have all the population, but we're still lagging behind in the service to our African American and Hispanic populations and our students that live at or near the poverty level, or economically disadvantaged kids. And High Point, jumping around, but going back to High Point's, low socioeconomic is up there in the 65 to 70% range as well. So they're dealing with that being considered a subpopulation now. So you're rated, you have your African American, you have your Hispanic subpopulation that you have, but economically disadvantaged is a subpopulation as well, and sometimes it's reflected within those.
Do you know what that is for High Point? Like, what's the percentage for economically disadvantaged?
It's between 65 to 70. We can pull it. The whole thing is we have to identify the strengths and weaknesses of kids, and take it down to that student level. If we don't get down to the student level with our data and specific instructions to those student needs, we're not going to get there. And in order to flip the accountability rating, we have to find a way to better serve those students that we haven't served well in the past. Specifically, our African American students, our economically disadvantaged students, and our Hispanic students, and that's where a lot of the discussion, and that's where a lot of the ongoing discussion about what are the learning styles of those students, the information that we're bringing in, and looking at the students that make the majority of our kids, what are their learning styles, what is the way we serve them, and how do we do that, and trying to bring those type of trainings and instruction back to our teachers of what makes that happen. Because the work that we give our students to do is the work that they have to use to get the learning that they need in order to be successful on the test, successful in life. So that's been a lot of the conversation with the teachers, is that from the district level and the campus level, and is that you have to find something that is meaningful for the learning of the student. That if you like it, is not as much as if it serves the purpose. Just because you like teaching it isn't as big of an issue as making sure it meets the needs of the students and what they need to learn to be successful and move forward. That's not about fun and games and things like that. That's about something that is relevant to the student and what their needs are being met going forward. And that's a tough transition and a tough call, but everything that we have indicates that we have to be focused on the needs of our students, and the needs of the majority of our students who are struggling the most are the ones that, when you're looking at accountability, are the ones who take the large share of the attention away from that, or not away, or they're the ones who deserve a large share of the attention, the ones who are really struggling and are behind the 8 ball on that piece. I think that's a big piece of it, is really getting the focus on our students and what their needs are, and the students who have not been successful, how are we going to create an environment for them to be successful.
RTI, are you doing that also, like at web and intermediate?
Yes.
All the campuses or just?
The targeted improvement plan, yes.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing that?
Web and intermediate had targeted improvement plans last year. Junior high,
But aren't those, for the target improvement plans, that's what the principal comes up with, right?
that's what
Those are
the
campus driven.
the
Yes.
campus leadership team has to pull those together, yes. Those
Okay.
are driven by the campus leadership team. Now, there's a campus improvement plan, and that's where all those names and fun things get, because there's always a campus improvement plan that every campus has to do. It requires you to, and there's certain requirements that you have to put in there. So those are done, and then the targeted improvement plan is specifically what that campus leadership team thinks they can help implement to pull them off of that improvement required rating.
We operate with a belief that the closer the decisions can be made to the student level, the more chance of them being effective. The process is encouraging the campuses being with them. We want them to look at their data. And one of the things we've struggled with in the past is getting deep enough into the information that really gets to the student level. Trying to get it to where the teachers can really see an individual picture of each student rather than just looking at class level data. So trying to get those data sources back, but taking what the campus identifies as the needs and finding the common threads across the district and pull those together as a district. One of the, probably this year, the largest, going back to last year, going through the things, it was there, but we're really trying to take a look, is literacy, student literacy from K through 12. How our students develop their reading levels, reading skills, how they develop as readers, how they move forward, and the reading, and also into the writing pieces, taking written text or taking any type of communication and converting it into a written form for them as we go through, and really taking a deep look at how we've doing those. We've been meeting with individuals from each campus and them having them identify what their literacy pieces are on that and where their base is on and how are they actually using those. We have terms, different things we use, but how is it actually being used in the classroom, and what are the things that we're solid on, and what are the areas we need to go back and improve and look at that on. We unified the district reading assessment this year for K through 8. We've always assessed it, but it's been by campuses, and as they came back, and we're taking some district level assessment off of a single tool that's common to all 3 campuses.
Is there a certain program that you're using for that?
This one's called iStation. It's through the state of Texas, and it's a reading it's a reading diagnostic. It's a reading diagnostic assessment that has been the state of Texas made available 2 years ago, and we've used it 3 through 8. But through conversations with the campus and everything, extended the assessment piece now to kindergarten, which was what we purchased to allow that to come in so we can track those reading levels.
And that was just this year?
To unify it.
Okay.
Unify it all the way down to kindergarten, and take it as far up. We've used it as an assessment and piece on that, but fleshing out, putting it completely into play there, where we can do 3 grade level assessments and tracking our students district wide. We're doing that within the campus modules, but moving to do it to district wide.
How often?
There's at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, and at the end of the year.
So you've already done one this year, and the next one will be January?
January-ish, and then...
So then, when you do the assessment, okay, so when they first come in, how does that shape what you do with that child?
The assessment pieces that go onto the campus the campus interventionist or instructional coaches and get with the teachers. And that's part of what, going back to Denise, looking at what are the targeted skills that that child needs to be specifically worked with in that campus.
So do you have one at each campus, a campus interventionist?
Yes, we have
Does that-
interventionists on every campus.
And traditionally, that drives their small group instruction, it drives the teacher's small group instruction and the interventionist group instruction. And sometimes that interventionist is going into the classroom and they're doing 2 small groups while they have centers going on. Sometimes they're doing a pull-out for some of those students. So it looks a little bit different, but it drives that, they use those to determine where do they begin intervening to move those students forward. And so it drives, again, the teacher's small group through to the intervention and what we need to do, through to the RTI pieces, through to, which is that response to intervention piece. So like at the junior high level, that drives kind of what group they go into during that block of time.
Each campus looks, though, because we have a pre-K through 3 makeup at Webb. There's 7 people who Bill has pulled. They were interventionists. They brought them in as instructional coaches / interventionists, and instead of pulling kids out of the classroom, they're going into the classroom to work with the teachers in the class and create small group. At intermediate, Mr. Marvel, who is a teacher, is working as an instructional coach and helping to set up, and then they have
The 5 other people that are.
5 other people that wear an interventionist hat, but also may have another duty. The teacher who mans the computer lab and those things is also an intervention who's also going into classrooms and helping them.
How often are they going to the classrooms? Is it like once a day, once a week?
Oh, it's daily.
The people who are doing that, they're daily in classrooms on each one of those campuses. We have
Okay.
literacy teachers at High Point who do a mix of that. Then as we moved in, the RSVP and the instruction coaches are helping on that piece. We are mainly our academic coordinator and type of individual at junior high and high school. So that we've
Those are the only 2 campuses you have one at, an academic coordinator at? Or?
Well, we have responsibilities. Jake's that we have an academic coordinator at the junior high. Miss Ramsey's position, the associate principal position, is overall the curriculum instruction at the high school. So the titles are a little bit different, and so are the level of responsibility. But Jake George is the academic coordinator at the junior high, working with the teachers on that. We don't have as many interventionist type folks at the secondary level. There's been a push trying to get those down more at the elementary levels on the formational years. And trying to address these needs as we're going forward. Mr. Powers is the chief of teaching and learning. Joanna Moreland does instructional technologies, and she goes out and helps mainly in integrating technology into the classroom, into the lessons on those pieces. Miss Bailey is over all the assessment pieces and all the state testing and all the assessment that goes on.
And how long have you had those 3 positions? Because Scott was promoted to that, what, year and a half ago or so?
We restructured, I guess it was about a year and a half. And Joanna, I guess, 4 years, 5 years?
Yes.
Libby's office changed. She was working at the high school office and knew that, and with the changes, but she's always it's been the job that she's been in for a long time, is assessing that, but moved her out to help with some other campuses as well, as far as how the assessments go and all the coordination of that.
How do you feel about all this? I mean, this is, pretty much on your shoulders as superintendent, and if you've tried to restructure things and things haven't worked out, and it feels like you've got more on your plate every year. I really didn't see Webb coming, and now possibly High Point and junior high. I mean, those are what, 4 of your 6 campuses, is that right?
Yes, it's constantly on my mind, and what They're trying to think of what else can we do, what can we change, what do you not change, what do you do to stem the flow and the flow where it goes? Because I think you touched on it, there's constantly more, and the more we go down this road, the more time is taken away from what we need to be doing, is working with kids in order to fill out forms, in order to meet this requirement or that requirement or this request, that's generating a report that goes somewhere else rather than stay in the district. And
Because of reconstitution.
because of the steps that go through that, the focus still has to come back and have a deeper understanding of how we get our students, and our students that we have historically struggled with on getting high levels of academic performance with. And I don't believe that's because of the students. I believe that's because of systems in place or structures in place that we've been battling. We've not served our African American students well. We've not served our Hispanic students well enough for them to reach that. And we really haven't served our economically disadvantaged students well enough, because it's not a function of capability, but I think there is a function of lack of motivation and lack of motivation in those students because of some of the practices that we're trying to change in the past. It's getting us as a staff to see that in order for our district to succeed, in order for community to succeed, we have to do a better job of serving all of our students and meeting their needs at that student level. And the first step for when we talk about reconstitution, the first step when we talk about accountability or moving from IR into Met Standard under this system that we're now have been thrown into, is each student has to be addressed at their individual need level. That's a task that we're undertaking and going through to find better ways to do that. Some of it's going back and saying, take things that we found value with in the past and bring those back and reinstituting them. That kids need to read, and so building time in a day where students read, but they have to read things that they're motivated to read and find interest in, and we can't dictate all of that in order for them to develop a way to enjoy reading and then be able to read deeper into those. But that they have some choice in those matters, and student choice, student autonomy, students seeing the reality of what they're doing in hands-on, and being very deeply driven with the state standards, and that there's no shortcut to getting there, that our teachers have to understand. We have to develop the time and put the time in place where teachers have the ability to dissect and understand the standards and in the different ways that they're assessed, so that they can do those things with students. And we don't believe that comes out of worksheets or just there's anything that can be bought out there. It comes with time, and it comes with teachers being able to develop lessons and develop instructional models that focus on the needs of kids.
Did teachers develop their own then, or do you guys have a curriculum within the classrooms? Or
We went through the process, and that's now referred to as Teach Resources, but it's essentially, it takes the standards and puts them in a timeline, a scope and sequence, and bundles them together. We look from the district level, we look at everything in quarters, because we're on a 9-week schedule. So the first 9 weeks, second 9 weeks, third 9 weeks, trying to get the concepts of the standards that we need. But with all the changes that are out there, the teachers that identify the student needs, trying to give times where the teachers develop the lessons and design what they need to design for the students need in the classroom. And that, because that's where those decisions that have to be made. We look at the different areas of support with the structures that are out there, with the funding mechanisms and some of those things, and the constant change in resources, that those have been more so limited over the recent years. And that's why so much is, we've dedicated our efforts of saying, how can you look at what you do in the classroom differently that meets those students' needs? Because I can remember one conversation very vividly, but it sort of echoes it. It was, and this was a couple of years ago, whereas we were struggling with one of our teachers. I just said, if you could, can you do what you do much better from your side of the desk? And the answer was no. Okay, and I knew it's for all of our teachers. They're doing what they know, and can you work any harder any longer? And I don't think our teachers can work harder any longer. So we had to begin to look at different ways to look at it and try some different approaches to that looks at what is the motivation level for our students, and how do we get them engaged in what they need to be learning and making those choices that they're willing to learn it and stick to it and persevere for the assessment pieces as well as for their own future.
As far as you say, we don't feel like we've served our Black, Hispanic, and economically disadvantaged population. How do you plan to better serve them? Like, have you guys come up with ideas that you're going to be implementing anytime soon?
Students color that you mentioned there, the African American, the Hispanic, and also our economic disadvantage, they either gravitate toward greater interaction with their learning, shorter burst of direct and teacher-driven instruction, and more a little bit something to do hands-on. It's something to do hands-on, or something that they can get and manipulate and get and increase the feedback time on that and moving to that. So purposeful work in those areas.
Some more hands-on learning. And you said increase the feedback, like from the students during classroom instruction?
From the student, and also from the teacher level, that it's the classroom has to become more interactive, where that feedback loop shortened. It's not, we're going to wait all week and then get a test at the end of the week, and then you get the test back and do corrections. There's got to be daily of what we need to work at and how we need to improve on an ongoing basis. And if a student needs more focused instruction on a certain skill, of individualizing that to the classroom, which puts a large yeoman's amount on the adults that are there trying to essentially individualize instruction for an entire campus. That's the practice, the best practices that we see out there through the state, through everything. It talks about getting it down to the student level and doing that. Taking it down to the student level is on the data, focusing on the individual student needs. That's part of addressing better serving those populations that we traditionally underserved. Changing the classroom to be more hands-on, more kinesthetic, tactile, has shown to serve those populations. The family element of the Hispanic culture and introducing that into the classroom in different ways with the teachers.
How would you do that?
That they get to bring their personal stories into the classroom on a narrative or writing, or bringing some of the family story into the classroom, and that it relates to them and the work they produce. The social aspects is what research tells to us with the African American students, having that ability to the social piece of it. The economically disadvantaged is there's research and pieces that go back that what is the real life application and how can we give them an experience of that to tie their learning back to, so that they have a place to tie it on to and what to know on, rather than dealing with as much abstract. So using those elements within the techniques they're using in the classroom, and teachers looking at different ways to do that and being purposeful with those things. It's not we're just going to do this for free time, and that it actually there's the instruction and learning is driven with that. And of course we're talking about it from a district level, so those are some of the big ideas behind it. But I think with each of the teachers can share, each teacher who's looking at that can share some different strategies that they're using precisely in the classroom. But it's been a discussion of what are your students' needs, and looking at that and how you identify that and make those happen. But it all first comes, we have to know our students. The teacher, we have to have relationships in the classroom and on the campus level to know who our kids are and understand what makes them tick.
What's the percentage now of economically disadvantaged by the district? Was it 78%?
We've been between 70 and 80% now, pretty consistently across the district.
What's the difference between, a white child who's not economically disadvantaged and a white child who is economically disadvantaged in their learning abilities?
Some of it's their personal experiences,
And how do you overcome
I
that?
think you find with economically disadvantaged, their world experiences aren't quite the same, and I wouldn't know the exact population, but I know where somebody who has some means may take them on vacations and get to see the ocean. Our students don't necessarily know what an ocean looks like because they haven't had that opportunity to go see that. So when we're talking to them about the life cycle and oceans and populations, they don't have a visual, so we've got to bring that visual to them. Whereas somebody who may have the means may have been there and actually seen it firsthand. I know one example, we tried to take the students down to Houston to go to the museums, and we got to downtown Houston, so I said, look, we're in New York. Well, then it was like, okay, we've got to really talk to them about, visualizing that every state has cities and every, but they saw big buildings and thought this is New York because their experience hadn't been to go to a big city.
What grade level was that?
That was a second, third grade group that we took. So it was, it was younger level who, and you may not have taken the younger levels to the city where you've taken older kids. But again, sometimes it's just those life experiences that we're able to give that some of your economically disadvantaged don't get. Now, there's several of those that will travel and do things too, but so sometimes it's just the life experience. Sometimes it's the understanding that these students may be the first ones to ever go beyond high school, and so there isn't anybody in the family who can tell them what that is, and so they don't understand what going off to a technical school, going off to a junior college, going off to a four-year college means, because they haven't had any role model to show them, and so they don't know what that experience it is, and so it's scary. They don't know what that means, and so how do we give them that experience to show them that this is a whole nother option to just graduating and going to work? A lot of them understand graduating and going to work, but a lot of them don't understand the other because they just haven't had an experience with it, or somebody in the family who can talk to them, or friends who can talk to them. So
you're saying they lack incentive?
I'm not even sure it's incentive. It's just that sometimes it's just the understanding of what else is out there. And I figure even with my own children, what they understand is probably what I've given them, not necessarily what somebody else might give them. And so even they're lacking in some of those. What could really be out there? We may see Texas A&M and Sam Houston Prairie View because they're within 40 minutes of us, and that's what people talk about and blend. But they don't realize that there's, however many colleges and universities across the United States out there, and they're like, don't even have an idea that, if you go another 50 miles, you're going to hit another university. If you go another one, you're going to hit another junior college. You go to another one, and there's really that many opportunities. If you were to probably draw a line around and say, these are all the opportunities within 50 miles of your home, and I probably haven't even done it with my own kids.
It goes back to understanding and realizing where your students are and what their resources are.
Right, and are you aware of how many of them do come from single parent families, or they're being raised by grandparents, or?
And we know that don't know exactly. We know those numbers are exact. But I think that I go back to another conversation of having with teachers. The teachers were expressing a frustration over students not doing their homework. I understand that frustration. I've been in the classroom when I gave an assignment, they didn't do their homework. The question is, are they not doing their homework because they just don't want to do their homework? Or are they not doing their homework because they don't understand it? Or if they don't understand, they have a question and they can't complete it, how are they supposed to get that information? And this was on the front end of the time, and with some teachers, but they're like, well, we gave them the homework and they can look it up here. They can ask their parent for help and all that stuff. And I think it goes to the same thing. If they don't have a single parent who's trying to do everything they can, our position isn't that the parents aren't trying to do everything they can. Single parents trying to do everything they can, but they're in a class that's past where we were in school or something like that. How are they going to access that information, and how are they going to do that? I see it from the teachers. Our teachers who have success on a high, and we got some teachers who have some really good success with their kids. They struggle over those things, and they will change what they do to meet the kids' need in the hands-on piece. Or those kids, they contact those parents, and the parents know that the kids have permission to email them, and they'll get an email or a text message in the evening and answer a question for that student, and make those conveniences for those students, to create those things so that the students have the opportunity to get there. And the message is, with economically disadvantaged, being the belief that they can start at 8 o'clock in the morning and they can go at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they have the resources outside the school day to do the homework to a high level to get the understanding and all that, is just not there. And how do we compensate, have a high level of expectation for them, and not say, oh, it's okay because I know you had a rough night last night, but say, you may have had a rough night last night, I empathize with you, I understand. These are the things we got to accomplish, and so how are you going to accomplish these? And we continue to move forward.
How do you compensate for the kids that don't have technology at home and what they're required to do at school?
Some of that goes back to, we have extended library hours, we have extended time for kids to come into but we also have lending libraries where we can lend devices and things to students to go home.
At each campus?
Yes, and then we have, we have hotspots. I do see a lot of students who come up even to the central office in the afternoon and are sitting outside with their device, or will come inside and sit and do homework here, because we have a hotspot here where they can connect and they can do those things. The Navasota Center has, the computers and resources there too, and they have hours that are available. So sometimes it's thinking outside the box, but it is being able to send devices home sometimes with students.
So you feel like you have a sufficient amount
I would say sufficient.
to cover that?
We have methods that we're working with to continually to grow toward that. Another difficulty on the classrooms of today is creating that balance of how that technology comes and goes.
Because you lose the student's attention when you get off of it.
Yeah, you do.
What I've seen.
Our teachers are on the front lines and doing those things, and it's a yeoman's task. No one really understands how the long hours of anguish and things that our teachers are going through. And when you're dealing with some of the challenges that face our teachers from demographic standpoints, from experience standpoints, from just a myriad of issues, and you layer all these other things on top of it, it just makes it that much more emotionally draining and taxing.
I know one thing, Mr. Murray, we talked about, he said we need to serve the African American population, better than we have, and I said, well, what are you going to try and do to accomplish that? And one of the things he said that they're lacking is maybe the amount of African American teachers that are within the school district, and how do you balance that versus hiring the best qualified?
You try to hire the best quality teacher that you can for at any time, any point in time.
And who does the hiring for the district? Denise? You're part of that,
It's a
right?
combination because, we're going out to
It's a process.
recruiting fairs, so we send, principals to recruiting fairs, we send central office staff to recruiting fairs. There's the regular application process. Principals vet candidates and then they make recommendations to us. We will sometimes find candidates and we'll make recommendations to them. So, because you're a smaller district, it's not just one person doing all the hiring. It's really kind of a combination. Principals still have some of their own autonomy and they make recommendations to us. We try to vet those candidates as, some before them, some after them, some pulling together. But it's, most of our campuses use a committee of teachers of the same subject or like subjects, or in the summer especially, bringing 2 or 3 people along with an administrator to interview. Then we do the background checks, and then they'll make a reference to us. Sometimes we have a group of us that are interviewing here, and we'll vet a bunch of candidates, and we'll send out and say, hey, we really like these candidates. But ultimately, the campus gets to interview their people to see, are they going to mesh with their people?
So would you agree with what Mr. Murray said, that maybe one of the solutions is to increase your number of African American teachers?
Sure, we try to do that every year, get more and more of those in, but sometimes there's just not as many of those applying. But his numbers have increased significantly if you cross the campus, but we still would love to be able to pull in more African American, more Hispanic role models, more diverse populations just in general. We'd like to get all our K-12 more role models involved and do more males even. Teaching is a pretty female oriented business, but yet we've got a ton of boys in our schools, and we'd like to have more male role models that the kids can look up to.
With the demographic shifts of the district, the more that we can diversify our staff, the better we feel like we'll be equipped to address the needs of those students. And we make a conscious effort to look at that, but we also look at trying to get the best quality teachers we can. And there's some areas that they're just really hard to find, that we're having a really difficult time.
Is it also difficult to recruit because you are going through reconstitution at 2 campuses
Well,
now? Or?
It's just difficult to recruit in general right now because of the process of teacher induction, from coming out of the colleges and universities going to alternative programs and change. People are coming into the profession without a knowledge of what the reality and the hours are like on the other side. And we have a situation at the high school right now where we started the year and the Spanish teacher left. Any Spanish teacher is hard to just find the certification, and they left. Their first year coming in, alternative. I tried it, I don't want to do this anymore, and they're going. And we hadn't had anybody with the certification with apply, and there's not a plethora of substitutes out there to go in and teach a Spanish class. And so we've had to find alternative methods, and now we've contracted with a company that has a certified teacher at a remote point that's bringing in, and have a long-term sub that's working in between those lessons. Is it ideal? No. And are there complications with that? Yeah, we're having some of those, and so, but we're reevaluating that every day as we go along, and that goes back to trying to solve multiple problems at one time, because that puts a larger deal on the technology and makes a dedicated use of that on an ongoing basis that we had to pull out of other areas.